Good evening and many thanks for watching KTN News. My name is Dennis Aseto. Welcome to this edition of Planet Action, your #1 premier show on issues to do with climate and what actions we must do together, consolidate our efforts to make sure that we restore that which we destroyed. On show today, I will be having a discussion with Gabriel. He comes from an Indigenous community and we'll be having a discussion around their stake when we talk about issues to do with climate change. Remember, COP28 is going down in Dubai, UAE, as negotiators, head of states have this conversation. What will be the discussion that is happening there? Remember, loss and damage is one of the biggest conversations happening. It was discussed during COP27. But now that is in Egypt, now in Dubai, they are speaking about operationalizing this fund. Will we finally see that white smoke? Only time will tell as the COP28 continues. The indigenous communities will be heading there sometime next week to present their case as well. And today, I'm having that conversation. But before we get to that, President William Ruto Sunday met with United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed on the sidelines of COP28 in Dubai, where they agreed to work closely to increase the trade relations between Kenya and UAE. President Ruto said the robust trade relations will see Kenya expand its value by increasing exports to the UAE. Ruto also, while in Dubai, held talks with Kosovo President Vosa Osmania. While giving his address to the congregants, those who are at COP28, the president also touched on the importance of readjusting the financial model to other countries, especially the developing nations. Now, floods and drought affect elements of human security when it comes to food production, nutrition, and diseases. On day 4 of the COP28 summit in Dubai, the focus is on health. Faith-led communities called for civic education in order to disseminate the discussion to the grassroots level for a collective approach in the fight against climate change. Led by Reverend Ezekiel Lesmore, they emphasized on the need for accountability while addressing the effects of climate change.
COP28 in Dubai, Expo City, kicked off on a higher note, with religious leaders talking about human security when it comes to water, food, and the impact it has on human beings.
Abuja, the capital city, never experienced the kind of flood they experienced this year. So this is a result of climate change and also people's inability or insensitivity to the environment, ensuring that the early warning and early response mechanism system in terms of flooding or climate-related disaster are not properly tapped upon to ensure that there are a lot of mitigations and preparation towards this.
They're advocating for involvement in issues of climate change, whereby they need to be involved when it comes to funding so that the money is accounted for and for it to reach the vulnerable community. I managed to speak to some of the religious leaders, among them being Reverend Dr. Gibson Ezekiel Lesmore of AAC.
There's a gap in terms of combining efforts to fight issues to do with climate change. Therefore, it's very important for religious leaders to come together, develop strong networks, because they're very close to the citizens, they're very close to the communities. Everybody listens to religious leaders. Therefore, they have a very big voice, they have a very loud voice, a very strong voice to educate, to sensitize the citizens on how to deal with climate change issues.
Religious leaders need to be at the forefront of making demands when it comes to the funding side of things. So let's move away from the statements and responding, which is important, but really getting to the center stage of the negotiations in terms of the demands that they would be making on behalf of these communities.
Some of the issues emanating from this discussion are issues to do with the role of religious leaders, which does not start and end with opening and closing remarks.
Burial Ringos bringing us that from UAE in Dubai, to be specific. Now, elsewhere, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka now says there must be public participation in the sale of carbon sink, which is a product of the forest that the communities around them have been protecting over the years. Kalonzo says the central government is minting billions from the sale of carbon sink to the United Arab Emirates. Yet the communities that have been saving these trees do not benefit from the business. The Wiper leader disclosed that the government sold over 2 billion shillings worth of carbon sink from Chulu Hills in 2022, and the community never benefited from the proceeds. Kalonzo was speaking at Nzaikoni Catholic Church in Kathiani, Machakos County.
We have to tell each other the truth as Kenyans. Now, truth ni kwamba we are not doing well as a country in governance, and we probably are settling to the reality kwamba jamaa wamechukua mamlaka kwa njia ambayo walitumia. Na mimi nasema hivi, uchaguzi kama itakuwa 2027, naomba tuushinde mwaka ujao 2024, because jamaa yani ushuru kila mahali, karibu hata hewa wameuza. Wanauza hewa inaitwa carbon sink. Hewa, uniamini, wameuza na wamechukua pesa wakaweka mfukoni.
Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka talking about carbon sinks. How is that important to us today? I'll tell you why. The world's largest meeting on matters environment continues in Dubai. COP28 is ongoing, and with it, climate champions and negotiators from across the globe are meeting to discuss how best they will address climate change. But even as this conversation takes place in Dubai, what is the situation back home? What must we do to protect our ecosystems? Are we disenfranchising communities protecting our resources? In studio with me is Gabriel Musuni from the Kenya Indigenous Youth Network. Gabriel, welcome on set as we have this conversation. Former Vice President, Wiper Party leader, talks about carbon sink. This is very dear to your heart because you come from the Endoroi community. We talk about Mau Forest in that. Now, as he talks about carbon sinks, let's just go straight to that. Was there public participation to include the indigenous communities when we are talking about issues to do with carbon sinks?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Gabriel Musuni from Lokuto, the area that neighbors the Mau Forest, where the eviction has been taking place. In fact, I'm a Maasai, my brother I'm not in the real estate. But being a Maasai, we are also part of the forest. We live in the forest. And we have been protecting the forest as the indigenous community. And as what the Wiper leader said, it is so unfortunate that we have seen people going to do business, to sign deals with Arab Emirates on matters carbon, while ignoring the community, who are maybe the custodians and the people who have been protecting the ecosystem. So, in my opinion, public participation is very necessary, capacity building and consensus, and also agreement. And once this, whatever that's achieved by sale of this carbon credit, a large amount of it should go to the community.
And I'll come back to you on that. But now let's just take, in a bid to empower the communities living in semi-arid areas economically and to mitigate against the negative impact of climate change in Mbeere, residents trained through Fair Climate Network have launched the distribution of 60,000 mukau tree seedlings of Melia volkseni, an indigenous hardwood that grows only in 3 counties of Taita Taveta, Kitui, and Embu. The Melia volkseni tree planting is a partnership between the Nature Conservancy, Hans Seidel Foundation, and Fair Climate Network Mbeere in support of the President's initiative of planting 15 billion trees and in support of the greening of Middle Tana. Mbeere North MP Geoffrey Ruku noted that Fair Climate Network, among other community-based organizations, have embarked on several activities geared towards empowering the community economically through financing of nature conservancy.
Ukilinganisha na ile miti ingine ya kienyeji, hii miti inakupatia kitu tunaita hali litani ya mti. Unajua wakati tunapanda miti ingine tukijua hatutapata matunda yake. Lakini kwa mkao ukipanda leo, hesabu kuanzia miaka 10 utaanza kupata matunda yake.
Uweza kushikana na kuongea na kuandika ile proposal na kukaa chini na Nature Conservancy NGO ambayo ni international NGO ambayo iko katika nchi mingi katika ulimwengu, na hiyo Nature Conservancy NGO ikasema itatufadhili na imetufadhili kwa kiwango ya $100,000 ambayo yake itaenda yote katika kupanda miti ya Meria Fokensi ya mamukao.
And very well, everyone is talking about tree planting. In studio with me is Gabriel Musuni as we have this discussion. And Gabriel, before we took that story, you were talking about issues to do with carbon credits, the carbon sinks that are being sold, and the fact that the indigenous communities, those that have been in charge of protecting our forest, have not been involved. Have you had these conversations before? Have you sought audience with the powers that be so that you are included in this conversation? Make sure that when they get 2 billion shillings, at least 200 million gets to you.
First of all, I want to say that this idea of carbon credit, I can say it is like a black hat in the room. Mm-hmm. It has taken us long to identify that there is a business called carbon credit. Even right now, when you go back to our homes or to our areas, most of the people doesn't understand or are not aware that there is something called carbon credit. So at the moment, this is now the time when we are trying to reawakening moment, when we are trying to come up to see that we sensitize our people, our community, that there is carbon credit and our community ought to benefit from it. So for now, I can say that this is the first initiative we are taking. We've never had before, we've never sensitized our people, because I'm sure even most of us are not aware. So this is something that has been hidden for long. It has not been to the public, but at least now some people are aware of it. So we are trying to make awareness. We are trying to sensitize our people to see that also they benefit from this, from whatever that is achieved in carbon credit. Because it is so ridiculous that even if it is 200 million achieved from it, that even a coin cannot go to the community. And it is this community that has protected this forest, for example. Even like where we are, it is the community that hived off this land so that it will remain the forest.
Now, Gabriel,
Yeah.
I was speaking to Judy Kipkenda the other day,
Yeah.
and I remember her sharing a podium with President William Ruto representing the indigenous people. And she is not happy at all by the fact that the indigenous communities are being ejected from the forest, that which they depend on for food. Because that is the life they live, basically. Now, as the indigenous communities head to COP, as their voices are being taken to COP28, Africa Climate Summit happened in the country. Indigenous communities gave their views, their pieces of mind as they go to COP28. Kipkenda is traveling there, I think, on Saturday. What do you want them to tell the negotiators at Dubai?
First of all, I want to say that the eviction or whatever that has been happening is so inhuman. And the way at which it was being conducted, it is so inhuman, and in a way that doesn't even respect humanity. And besides not respecting humanity, it is destroying the livelihoods of the indigenous communities. Because these are the people who have been adapted to this ecosystem. They are living there, they are getting their way of food there. And it is so unfortunate that you just come and you evict them. And besides even evicting them, most of, like, these people are never served with a notice that we are going to evict you. What happened is that they just wake up in the morning and find that their houses are being they are being evicted. So, like
now, Gabriel, as you talk about an indigenous community and the evictions that are happening at this forest, just paint a picture of what that means to an indigenous person who depends on the forest for food, for shelter, and even for security.
First of all, I want to say that one now means her livelihood, or the livelihood of this indigenous community is destroyed. He has now, or he or she has now to go and adjust to another way very different from how they used to live. For example, if these people are so dependent on the forest, or so dependent on, because actually there is what we call the ecological balance, whereby these people at the same time they are depending on the forest, most of them are also protecting this forest. We cannot say that because they depend on the forest, they are working to destroy. That one is a fiction that has been there, that people have been saying that these people who live along the forest are destroying the forest. But the fact is, although they are dependent to it, they are at some level, they are also protecting. And if you see even like where these people are being evicted, the forest is still intact, like how it was. So now if you evict this person from this place, it means that you have completely shattered his life. He has to go and start from zero. He has to go to adjust the new ways, which may be even difficult to adapt.
Now, Gabriel, the president is big on issues to do with climate change. He says by the year 2032, he wants to grow 15 billion trees. But we cannot talk about growing 15 billion trees and forget to address the fact that the president asked people to go to forests, cut trees for timber, because businesses have to continue. The president also went ahead and gave us a holiday to plant trees. Now, in all these conversations of planting trees, I know there was a case that was tabled at COP28 that we need around 500 billion shillings for us to be able to grow these trees. But is it double speak from the side of government when it comes to protecting these, growing these trees and protecting these trees?
In my understanding, I think the two statements contradict each other. Because if it is a clarion call to plant trees or to increase forest cover in the country, then the first responsibility we should have is to protect the already existing trees. We cannot call or we cannot urge the public to go for a holiday to increase planting trees while deliberately on the other side issuing orders that to lift ban on trees and tell our people to go and log trees. It is so unfortunate. And therefore, the issue of national holiday of planting trees, I think this day, I think it should be a genuine thing. Whereby, if it is all about planting trees, let's all stick to it and make sure that this day we fully maximize it. Because now, if for example, today we plant 100 million trees, while yesterday we lifted a ban and people went and logged, let's say, for example, another 100 million trees. So what are we doing? We'll be doing monkey business. So I think the most important thing is if we are on the clarion call to protect the ecosystem or to increase forest cover, then the president should not leave a ban on logging. I think we have been pushing that the logging, that lift on the ban should continue, and it should not be lifted because people we know how people behave when given a mandate to do. We know the damage they can bring. So I think the ban on trees should continue. The ban should continue, and we should not allow such a case to happen. And the president should withdraw.
Let's talk about climate financing.
Okay.
COP28, there's always a big debate when it comes to financing, specifically loss and damage. We know even at COP27, it took negotiators around 3 days, 72 hours to just agree on having a policy on loss and damages. They talked about $100 billion that was supposed to come, especially to Africa, to help in restoring destroyed ecosystems, to help with adaptation. But even as you talk about that, it is being said that the international powers want to fund mitigation, but we are pushing for adaptation. As this conversation continues, because I know it is still being discussed, even the COP presidency, Al-Jaber addressed that. What should African negotiators, Kenyan negotiators, go to say to be able to get these financing to come to Africa?
I think the issue with climate financing, I think it should focus on mitigation. Because now we are seeing a lot of the damages of climate change. The issue with climate finance should be a genuine thing, and the African leaders should find a way in which this climate finance is going to reach to the bottom level. Because now if you say we call for climate finance, but when it reaches, we don't see any impact that these finances bring. If we call for it, we should go to the ground level, whereby we sensitize on the issue of green energy, renewable energy, and we should see some kind of changes coming from these finances. Because if we receive and we are not utilizing, I think even those who are giving will not be, they will not be happy. So I think there should be a way in which this climate financing, it should focus, and mostly it is aimed at arid and semi-arid places, whereby we are seeing a lot of damages coming, like even the recent El Nino. I think this financing should now work on how to improve both the ecosystem and the livelihoods of our people. Yeah.
And when this financing came, let's talk about the ecosystem. Let's talk about Mau. We get financing right now. What do you want to see first addressed within Mau? Because when we talk about financing, it needs to go down to the grassroots level as we speak. Now, as an indigenous person who protects forest, and your community is big on making sure that these forests are protected, what do you want to see done to be able to protect those forests?
For example, if I use Mau as an example, where I come from, I think the issue with Mau, what we should do in Mau is to increase trees cover. Because we had the areas where people were evicted last time, we still have bare lands. I think that's what should matter at the moment. It is about increasing tree cover. And also, Mau, the boundary is stipulated clear, where people are not supposed to cross, and where I think within the boundary or within where Mau is confined, I think let's put our focus there and protect that, because it covers around 63,000 acres of land. If, for example, we put all our energy there and protect the already identified, because even the eviction that we are seeing yesterday or a few days ago, it is not really about the forest cover. It is going beyond where the boundary is, and the boundary is very clear. So whatever I want now to be done is to conserve, is to protect the tree covers that are now. If we have 1 million trees, we should increase to see we have around even 2 million or 3 million trees. So I think that's what. Also, there is this agenda of fencing Mau. I think if it is about fencing Mau, we should fence on both sides. It should not be aimed at one position. Even if it is all about fencing, we should fence with an idea or with an agenda that we are fencing it to protect. Because now when you see, like it is being fenced, we don't know whether it is the tradings of carbon that's coming to take place, or it is being given to somebody else to come in. Because we saw KFS signing contract in COP in Dubai with a Dutch company, and even no one was involved. It is just KFS signed at their own. The community was not involved. The county government was not involved. And most of the part of Mau, like Masai Mau Forest, is registered as a community land. As a trust land.
Gabriel, let's take this short commercial break. When we come back, we continue having this discussion on financing has been a problem, but let's scale that further on what our counties are doing, what you and I should be doing, and what the national government should be doing before we even go knocking on international bodies to give us financing. Let's take this short commercial break. Planet Action will be back with much more.